And Bob Nightengale, the USA Today baseball columnist, because the big news was Kyler Murray and how much he weighed at the combine, but pretty much it was the news after that, Bob, which was Bryce Harper was finalizing a deal to become a Philadelphia Philly. Were you surprised at the Phillies finally securing this deal with Bryce, and how did you realize that this was going to be the team?
Yeah, well, this was a team, back in November. I said it's the only place for him to go. He's got to be in Philly. I never envisioned it was going to drag on for 4 more months after that.
Right.
He kind of kept waiting to see whether teams get involved. Even as of 2 days ago, called back with the Nationals, the White Sox, the Padres to see if they wanted to jump back in, and they were all out. So basically it came down to Phillies for $330 million. Well, for 13 years, or San Francisco Giants, $310 million over 12 years. And I think with the ballpark and everything else, the fact the Giants are rebuilding, Philly's where we wanted to be.
Were you surprised at the terms, though? I mean, you get a record, tying a record number in terms of the years, 13-year contract, a full commitment with no trade clause, the no opt-out. Just the terms of this deal are kind of unprecedented.
I wasn't surprised at the 330. I thought I'd get that. I thought it'd be more like a 10-year contract.
Okay.
But if you're the Philadelphia Phillies, you love that because your average salary of that contract is 25.4.
Right.
Otherwise, a shorter contract, like 10 years, would have been 30 years. So it helps luxury tax implications and all that. So I think Phillies are thrilled. At one point, I think we're all thinking that Harper may get $400 million. That market just never materialized.
Yeah, we thought about it. It was rumored $400 million, but the 330, which I think is obviously a record in North American sports for the total value. But what does this do now for Philadelphia? You mentioned their salary now. They're able to now budget for the next 13 seasons that they know 25.4 of it has to go to Bryce Harper. But how have they positioned themselves outside of Bryce Harper to get this team to a World Series?
Yeah, they've had a fabulous winter. When you talk about Andrew McCutchen coming there, trading for Gene Segura, getting a closer, David Robertson, picking up, one of the 2 or 3 best catchers in baseball, JT Realmuto. Fabulous winter. And, now this gives them, an Osgood's chance to get to the World Series. Certainly they'll probably, slight favorites in the NL East. And, certainly they have good chance as anybody to get to a World Series.
USA Today baseball columnist Bob Nightengale joining the Rich Eisen show. Kirk Morrison filling in for Rich. And just thinking about the Phillies, and what they've been able to do in terms of, like you mentioned, this offseason, and now to secure Bryce Harper. Were they really always the favorite, though? You know what I mean? Like we talked about what they've done over the last couple of months, but were they always the favorite, or is this something that kind of materialized more so over the last month or so?
No, they were always the favorite. I mean, they were gun-ho from the beginning. Like I said, when Harper turned on the $300 million in Washington Nationals,
right?
They were the team to beat, and they came in aggressive, and they weren't shy about it. John Middleton, when I talked to him, said that quote, "Hey, we're going to spend money even if we're stupid about it," and and just kind of they had to raise their prices as it went along, particularly when the Giants jumped in very late, Dodgers jumped in very late. But they're always a stalking horse in this thing. And, here they signed Harper, and one day yesterday, after the news broke, they sold 100,000 tickets. And that's worth about $4 million to the Phillies. So he may end up, giving him $10 or $15 million just, worth the ticket sales by the time this all said and done, just for year one.
You mentioned the San Francisco Giants are in a rebuild. So when you look at the Dodgers and their kind of last pitch efforts, and we heard about the meeting that the Dodgers had with Bryce Harper, possibly offering $45 million a year, why didn't it work out, do you think, for the Dodgers? Was it because of the years, or they just didn't like that number in terms of the dollars per year? Yeah,
it's just the years. That was it, strictly because, you give them a 4-year contract, you're still only talking about, $160, $170 million. And you're talking about almost leaving $200 million on the table. Obviously, they didn't want to do that. So yeah, just strictly the years. He could have jumped back in the market in 3 years, but it's sure tough to walk away, from that kind of money.
Bob, what's the feeling you think now in Washington? He spends the first couple years of his career in Washington, Bryce Harper does, and then now he goes to a National League East rival in the Phillies. Like, how are the people in Washington now, having to deal with this, knowing they're going to have to see him, a lot of times a year now?
Yeah, I think that brace themselves for it. I mean, everybody kept talking the Phillies are going to jump back in. They never did. They gave him a chance to sign. And they had a nice winner, too. They made some pickups. Obviously got Patrick Corbin, paid him $140 million. Obviously, they played the second series of the season in Washington. The Phillies are at Washington. So I'm sure they'll boo him, every single bat and things like that. But people in Washington booing would have been nothing like the Phillies fans going bonkers if he had signed with their team but them. I think they would have felt, a personal affront to that. Like, our city's not good enough for you. You're afraid to be here. So I think the reception in Washington will be very tame compared to what it could have been in Philly.
We've seen the Dodgers last couple of years make it to the World Series, the Cubs as well. But we look at the National League East now. What does this do for the Phillies this year, or do we see this East possibly having a representative in the World Series this year, outside of just the Bryce Harper signing for the Phillies?
Well, certainly it's the most competitive division in baseball. I mean, you got 4 teams. Obviously the Marlins aren't in there. It could have finished within 5 games on one another. I mean, the Nationals are going to be a powerful team again. The Mets have done, wonders with what they've done. So I think it's going to be and the Braves are, defending division champions, and they're a young team, so they should be stronger. I wouldn't be surprised if they get the closer, Craig Kimbrell. So I think it'd be a fun division. And, and there's not that much difference between those teams, the Dodgers, the Cubs, Brewers, Cardinals. So the National League, should be a fun league this year.
You can follow him on Twitter at B as in boy, Nightengale. Bob Nightengale, the USA Today baseball columnist. And for me, Bob, I'm always trying to spin the story forward. Like, you see that Bryce Harper gets 13 years, $330 million. And everybody's like, okay, who's the next? Who's the next guy that can surpass 330? And when you start to look at some names who will possibly fall in line, with a contract that can surpass a Bryce Harper, whether it's Mike Trout, we were talking Aaron Judge, Mookie Betts, who do you think could be the next guy that can surpass what Bryce Harper got?
I think just 1 or 2 guys. It's either Trout or Mookie Betts or both. Way too early in the career for Judge. You got to be closer to free agency to get that kind of money. Both Betts and Trout just 2 years away. Same team they've been with. Both teams want to extend them. So whoever goes first, it probably won't happen until next winter, when they're only 1 year away from free agency. But one of those guys, and not both those guys, should hit $400 million.
But when you look at what the Angels have already had that big contract for, obviously Albert Pujols, but back then it looks like that contract looks like a steal, right? 10 years, $250 for Pujols. Will they be willing to offer that same type of contract, but obviously $150 to $200 million more for a Mike Trout? Do you see a team kind of, not a team, but do you see the Angels probably falling in line doing that again?
Oh, I do. They want him bad. I think Mike Trout, people talk about free agency. He's very comfortable in Anaheim. I'd be stunned if he, doesn't stay there. I obviously like to win there more often, but very comfortable. So, I do see them getting him. Hey, if you're giving Harper a contract at the age of 39, Trout's just a couple years older, so no reason why he can't get at least a 10-year contract. At close to $40 million a year.
Bob Nightengale, the USA Today baseball columnist, and now that, look, this signing is now done. Okay, Bryce Harper is official. We'll have that press conference. He'll walk out. He'll put the jersey on now. Has baseball season now officially started now? Like, now that the big domino has finally dropped, can we now focus on baseball, spring training now, and start to get some of the other stories?
Mostly. We still got a couple of guys out there. I mean, you got Craig Kimbrell, best closer in the game over the years, just as far as saves and everything else, and also the former Cy Young winner in Dallas Keuchel. But you're right. I mean, now with the two big boys off the block, with Harper and Machado, now a lot more attention will be on the field rather than every single day. Where is he going? I bet I must have got 75 messages a day asking that same question, where's Harper going? So I'm sure in Philadelphia is driving people crazy.
Bob, I'm going on my baseball spring training tour that I go on every year in a couple weeks. And for me, I remember a couple of years ago when I'm sitting out there, I forget what stadium I was at, but I remember in between innings, there was this little clock in center field. And I'm like, what is that clock for? And it was the clock in between innings that was kind of trying to speed up pace. And I think that rule has helped out baseball in between innings. Now, there are some other rules that are out there, and some are being tabled for other years. But what else on the rules front that the league is kind of looking at that possibly can take place maybe this year, or something that they want to look forward to in the future?
Well, they're certainly looking hard at the pitch clock, particularly when nobody's on base.
Right.
20-second pitch clock, talking about the 3-batter minimum. Reliever comes in, has to face a minimum 3 batters before being taken out. Also, you can only have 13 pitchers on your roster. Can be expanded to 14 and 15, and which increases bullpen use. So things like that. We'll see if it happens this year, but it's coming. If it's not this year, it's next year for sure.
And do you see them making those changes possibly, though? I mean, obviously you want to speed up the game. You want the game to be more fun. And we want to see more offense. Do you think that will increase the speed of the game, but also increase the offensive numbers?
Yeah, it'll certainly speed up the game, by a couple of minutes at least.
Right. If
you add in shorten the commercial breaks, that adds a few more minutes. But yeah, we could see an increase in offense just if the pitchers get uncomfortable with that pitch clock. And if they say, okay, there's only so many pitchers you can use in a game, it forces pitchers to pitch longer. Maybe they won't be quite as effective. So you're absolutely right. It could have a trickle-down effect and get more offense.
He is the USA Today baseball columnist, Bob Nightengale. Appreciate the time, Bob.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it was Bob Nightengale. Follow him on Twitter at @BNightengale.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.